there and welcome again to my lovely reading review. As you know, I have a spring to read list and I've been getting at it. I had mentioned Blood in the Mist, how excited I was about this book. I had never really heard about it, but I read the insert. And now I read this book and I finished it. It was good. It wasn't what I was hoping for. I wanted fairies. You know, they mentioned fairyland. I wanted little fairies. There are no little fairies. However, there was fairy fruit throughout the whole thing. So this book, what I have gathered now that I read it, Nathaniel Chanticleer has a son named Ranulph. He is a young man and he just starts acting a little bit crazy. And so this one guy who is a doctor came in and his name is Endymion Lear and he's like, well, you know, he ate fairy fruit, so let's send him off to this school to try to help him. So his father's like, okay, if it will help him, I'll send him off. Ranulph goes off with his friend Luke to try to watch over him. So this is about all of this trying to solve a mystery of where this fairy fruit is coming from. And then you start to unravel some of the stuff about Blood in the Mist and what the town is like. Who is behind their history in general. Nathaniel Chanticleer is a very interesting character and I like, he has a relationship with, he's the mayor and he has a relationship with this governor who is his cousin and friend that grew up with him. I really like how they interact together. I will say the women in this are not treated that well. His wife is kind of looked down upon. His daughter also kind of goes missing and it seems like no one cares. And I'm like, what happened to his daughter? They do have a conclusion to that, but it was just weird how like the mother and the father seemed to be like, oh, well, you know, let's look for, but they were so worried about their son, but like not really the daughter. That was just odd. This was beautifully written. I thought it was very clever. This is written in the 1920s, but there are no fairies. Well, it was very clever. And I thought that Nathaniel Chanticleer was a really cool character. I felt like there was some growth throughout it. But then the conclusion of the book, I'm kind of scratching my head like, I don't understand. Like, it just didn't make sense to me. I was trying to understand why I can't give anything away. So anyway, it's a good book. It wasn't incredible, but I really had fun with it. Lady Tan's Circle of Women. This is a Lisa C book. This was the 7th Lisa C book that I've read. If you don't know how Lisa C writes, she always writes about, well, for the most part, she writes about Chinese history. A lot of times it's digging into her own Chinese family history. She did write a great book about Korean history at one point that I loved. I think the 15th century, you have a young girl. She's training to be a doctor with her grandmother. I think her grandfather is a doctor too. Not a midwife, but an actual doctor. And so she learns about all these herbs, ways that she could help people. She's really excited about it. She's very young, like 13 in the beginning of the book, but it goes throughout her life. And when she's 14, she is married off. But before then, she has this young girl who is training to be a midwife that she grows up with, and the two of them are very good friends. So the two of them, as they get older, they still have this friendship. So you have the doctor and the midwife, but when the main character gets married off, her mother-in-law kind of doesn't want her to be a doctor, and she's like, but that's who I am. Like, you knew that when we got paired off. Anyway, a lot of this book talks about how babies are born. I felt like there was a lot of stuff about pregnancy, a lot of stuff about midwifery, and then you had a lot of things about foot binding throughout it. And she had another book all about foot binding. So I was kind of like, we have to go through this again. But I feel like it wasn't as in depth as she had in the past, but it was a little bit much. I thought the story was very well done. There's even a mystery that goes on of this older woman who has a tragic incident. There's just a whole lot of stuff, but I felt like it tied in very well with the story, so I liked that. I really enjoyed the storyline, but all this extra information about doctoring and stuff, I kind of didn't want to know. Maybe a little bit here and there, but I am fascinated by midwifery for sure. It was just like a little much. There's a little bit of sexual content in this. It's not graphic at all. It's just talking about how she is preparing to be with her husband and just different ways that she's trying to get pregnant. It's not crazy, but it's not for kids. So I'll just say that this book is definitely for grown adults. I enjoy her stories. If there was anything graphic, I'd probably be like, I didn't want to read any of that. I feel like it was done in a good way without having anything explicit at all. And there's a lot of talk about concubines in this too, actually. The Garden Against Time. This also is one of my spring to read list books. I could not enjoy it. I was really hoping because, again, this one I went in kind of blindly. I just based it off of the cover. It is about this woman and how she grows up being interested in gardens via literature, but she does get an 1800s house that she wants to like do the garden. She talks about her upbringing with her parents and what that was like. She talks about the grief that she has over time. There's a lot of talk about COVID. Then she goes into political views. She goes into a lot of history. So she has like gardens in World War II Italy and what happened to them. So there are a little bit grotesque things that she brings up. She talks about plantations and slavery in England and stuff about gardening in that. But it was just like everywhere. This book I just feel like it wasn't personal enough. It was more like, I want everyone to just know my opinion on these things. And it was kind of like bleh. So I didn't enjoy it. So sorry. And content wise, this has like a whole bunch of stuff that I'm just like, I don't need to know any of that. So I would skip it. If I could go back, I wouldn't have read it. But I read it. Anything But Simple. It is by Herald Press, and I love Herald Press books. I've read so many. So I was very interested in this. I am a Mennonite, but not an ultra-conservative Mennonite, as you could see. I don't have my hair covered or anything. So I love reading about other Mennonites and their upbringings and what it's like. So she goes through some of her childhood. Her name is Lucinda. So Lucy goes through talking about what it's like to be pretty much the only single woman in her family and how hard that was on her as she was getting older. A lot about what her family did for a living. She talks a lot about her dad's life, and he had a troubled upbringing. And it was very kind of sad what he went through. And some of the things are shocking, like what he used to do as a kid. He turned to God and went back home when he was like an older teen after being this troubled kid for a while. But she talks too much about her parents and not enough about herself. When she does talk about herself, she has some struggles with faith. She makes friends with people that are atheists and she tries to learn from them. She grows very close to them. They're much older women, but she learns a lot from them. And I think it was very good that she was so open. But in the end, I feel like this book could have been a lot bigger. And I mean, it's pretty thin. It's only 200. It's not even 200 pages, 193 pages. I really would have liked this to be a little over like maybe 230 pages. Would have been great. Now, like I looked her up and now her life is different. And so I want a sequel actually about her life and what it's like now, because this was written before COVID. And at last, another spring to read list that I finished is Rose and Bloom. Rose and Bloom, I said, is the sequel to Eight Cousins. Eight Cousins I really adored. This book I didn't adore as much. It's very cute. Rose comes home from after like 2 years abroad. She sees her cousins that she grew up with. She has friends that she grew up around, and they all kind of reunite. And you know, she's at that age where back in that time, they kind of married off girls as young as they could. They set them up for marriage. But she's like, you know what? I love learning and I want to take my time. And if I get to know someone, I want to take time to get to know them before I go off and get married. Rose is delightful. And it's great to hear the characters come back. She does have some love interests in here. Some of her cousins are into her. Some of her cousins are into her friends. And the main two you have in here is Charlie and Mac. And they are very different. I feel like Charlie, I didn't really care for Charlie that much. Charlie was just like very much into Rose, but he didn't have the best lifestyle. And I think it's good with any relationship that she was going to go into that she took her time. Also, Mac, he's a very sweet young man and he is very smart, intelligent, very different. So it's great to see how they grew up and how differently they had become as grown people. So yeah, it's just about her forming relationships with them. I thought it was beautifully written. It's very poetic. If you read Louisa May Alcott's books, are just so beautiful. I just love how she writes, as she talks about poetry even and the interest in poetry that some of these characters have. One thing that bothered me is like, there's one character, she's very good at singing. They kind of make it seem like, okay, now that this is a different character from Rose. Like now that maybe you're gonna get married, you could give up singing. And it's like, but what if she likes to sing? Can she still be married and sing? So like, I feel like she should have been able to. I just don't understand why you have to completely stop just because you get married. I don't know. So yes, there is cousin relationships in this. And it's funny because there's even a part that talks about how she's not sure how she feels about that, or some character, or I think it's her uncle is not sure about how he feels about that. But it's very cute. I think that this is a good way to go into relationships. But you know, when people are just so into someone when they meet them and they're just like, I want to just be with you forever. And it's like, you don't really know them well enough. It's a little different when you grow up around them because then you do know a lot about them, but then they change over time. So I don't know. I guess this, there's fights about if you're a Charlie or a Mac person, or what would you choose? But there is some stuff in here that are very sad. There's a situation where I'm just like, wow, that stinks. Way to like ruin this book now. You'd have to read it to know. So I'll stop right there. I could go on with a couple other books that I finished, but I'll get to that next time. And I hope that you're having a wonderful week. Keep reading and tell me what you have read over the past couple weeks. Bye-bye.